Welcome to this edition of Rattling the Bars. I'm Master Musa, co-host with Eddie Conway, and as I always do, first I want to say Happy New Year to all the Rattling the Bars listeners and viewers, and the real news watchers and listeners. And I want to update y'all on Eddie Conway. I had the opportunity to visit uh, his wife Dominique, and Eddie Conway is doing great. At some point in time, we hope to have Eddie Conway make a cameo appearance on this program that he created and the network that he loved. Today, we have an extraordinary group of people, but more importantly, we have an extraordinary example of what George Jackson described in his essay on Towards the United Front. He said that the sheer number of people that are incarcerated, when you compare that with the people that are incarcerated and their family members, it's the only logical conclusion you can draw is that we have a massive amount of people that, if organized, could really have impact on the way the system is structured and the way the system treat people. Here today to talk about just that are two extraordinary women. One is Jody Hawkins and Ashley Gaddis. Welcome to Rattling the Bars.
Thank you.
First, let's start with you, Ashley. Tell the Rattling Bars a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Ashley, and I'm from Las Vegas, and I'm formerly incarcerated. I have been in and through both systems, the federal and state system. I've been directly impacted by the conditions of prison and the justice system as a whole. And I am part of Return Strong now as staff to try to make a difference within the system and policy and hope for better conditions.
Okay,
Um,
that's good.
mhm.
Jody, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell the Rattling Bar viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself, Jody.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for having us. My name is Jody Hawking. I um, have been a labor organizer for a very long time and am impacted. My husband's incarcerated, and I founded and now am the executive director of Return Strong, which is an organization that is really two-sided. On one side, we really center the voices of formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated people. And then on the other hand, we work with families of the incarcerated to actually be the hands and feet of this movement.
Okay, and y'all primarily located in Nevada, right?
We are primarily well, let me say this. We are focused on work in Nevada because what we have in common is either loved ones who are incarcerated in Nevada, but our activists really are all over the world because
Okay,
our loved ones are incarcerated in Nevada, but we don't all necessarily live there.
okay, that's good. All right, let's okay. So let's start by examining, because we're talking about Return Strong, which is a grassroots organization that was created by the family members of men and women that are incarcerated, and just like, as you outlined just a minute ago, as the men and women return, they become a part of Return Strong. But let's talk about, before we go into talking about the organization, and I'm gonna direct this to you, Ashley, because you experienced uh, a lot of the horrendous conditions that take place in the prisons. And Jody, you can weigh in. You can weigh in on it as well, Jody. But let's talk about the prison industrial complex in Nevada. Actually, talk about, and you serve federal prison and you serve state prison as well. But talk about the prison industrial complex in Nevada as you understand it.
Okay, so from my experience, I started my time in a private prison here in Nevada when it was CCA. So I've been involved in the system from privately ran institution to a state ran institution. So basically, I've seen it go from reform to human warehousing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, Meaning conditions just worsen and worsen and worsen.
Mm-hmm.
And um, the the problem or the major issues that are happening are the there's a lot of abuse, physical, mentally, and verbal abuse within the
Mm-hmm.
institution. Um, a lot of the staff that work there have worked at a men's prison, so they come there treating us or treating the women like men.
Right, right, right.
Um, and any complaints that happen, for the most part, get ignored, get shifted around, not heard.
Okay.
Um, Unfortunately, it's a system that really doesn't take women prisoners serious.
Mm.
You know, from our mental needs, our medical needs, our physical needs, and we're just categorized as one.
And let me ask you this here. Uh, and because I know from doing previous reports on dealing with women in prison, how many women prisons, to your knowledge, are in Las Vegas or are in Nevada?
There's approximately 800 to 1,000 between the main prison, which is Smiley Road, Florence McClure, and our camp in Jean, Nevada.
So 800 to 1,000 women. But
Yes.
how many? So how many prisons? How many prisons do they have? Because like for example, in the state of Maryland, they have one woman's prison for the state of Maryland, and that one woman's prison is consists of security wise maximum, minimum, and because they don't have no pre-release system, they don't have the right to like progress through the system. So I'm trying to see if this is a consistent concept when it comes to women prison throughout the United States. So how many women's prisons do
Yes.
they have?
Yes, you're correct. We have one prison that holds medium maximum, and we have a camp, one
Okay.
camp. Hmm.
Okay. So
And
this is so this go ahead.
no, and this
Go
goes
ahead. Go ahead,
from
Ash.
our Florence McClure prison holds the approximately 800 to 850 women. Now, and that's just recently because of COVID, but they've been overpopulated, over 1,000, which is not supposed to happen, and housing women in the gym or in other units on bunk beds
Okay.
because of the overcrowding. Hmm.
So this is consistent. So when we talk about the prison industrial complex and mass incarceration, which is the new form of slavery, the narrative is consistent throughout the nation that as if prison in and of itself is not barbaric and horrendous. Now women are discriminated against in society, uh, misogynist society, racist society, a sexist society, but then they find themselves incarcerated and discriminated against again in the form of not being uh, given no equity. Jody, talk about how did Return Strong come into existence?
So we started um like many places did in reaction to some circumstances that were going on in 2020. One was my own personal response to the murder of George Floyd, and feeling as a middle-aged white woman, like, what do I do to kind of start to, if you remember, like the racial divide that was going on in the country at that time, and I had done a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like anti-racism work, and so it started with a book club, and that was a worked with teachers across the country, and then I decided, my husband was incarcerated and had just gone back on a violation, and I started to really think about how families of the incarcerated a lot of times over accentuate personal responsibility and somebody's personal piece of a crime or a conviction, and that they miss some of the systemic issues that happen in addition to that. So I decided to start, really it was supposed to be just like a family peer learning circle was where it started. My background is in organizing, though. I'm a labor organizer and believe so deeply in the power of collective action and that we're always stronger together. And so we started on August 6th, 2020. We had our first family meeting. There were about 10 women there. And 3 weeks later, Nevada Department of Corrections, in response to Marcy's Law, implemented an 80 to 100% deduction of any money that went on people's books, any money they were making from prison industries. And I felt like we had to make a choice. We were either going to fight for everyone or we were going to try to figure out how to pay for ourselves, like our loved ones' restitution. And so we took on that fight, and we really weren't even in existence yet. We had one family meeting, and people who knew us back then, I kept telling people, I don't know what we're doing, but we have to do something, which is
Yeah,
my
yeah.
standard answer to everything is I don't always know the answers. I just know the only thing we can't do is stand still and watch this stuff go down.
Right.
So we started fighting that. We actually were able to get a stay within like the first month of it happening. We got a stay from the governor for about 5 months, and eventually stole a bill out from under NDOC, flipped it, and put statutory caps on restitution and deductions, which was amazing. They had to repay people any money that they had taken without the notification. It was a huge win. It wasn't like I would have loved to get it to go to no restitution.
Zero. Right, right.
Sometimes you have to like fight for the best case scenario, and then we don't have control over all of it, but it made a huge difference for people who were in prison and owed any money to the prison system, because they were literally, if you put $100, I know my husband was getting like $8 out of that 100, and they were taking all the rest of it. And then as soon as we got the stay on that, the COVID outbreak happened in Nevada, and Warm Springs Correctional Center went from 0 cases to about 400 cases within days.
Right.
And we had been tracking that information, and so had been going to the media saying, NDOC, they're lying about their numbers. That can't be true. This isn't true. So when the outbreak happened, it created a lot of questions for NDOC. And even though like we don't win every battle we're in with them, we have gotten the attention of media really across the country, and then other grassroots organizations. It's created a situation where we have won multiple fights with them where nobody has ever won before. It's just created a huge difference.
And Ashley, right as it stands right now, you're in a halfway house.
Yes, I'm in
Or
a specialty.
you
I'm in a specialty program that uh, gave an early release, and this program is through the courts.
all right? And so how did you become involved with Return Strong? Or when did you become aware? Because y'all Joe, y'all just been in existence like since 2020 what 2 or 20?
2020, our nonprofit formed in 2022.
Okay, so Ashley, how did you become involved with Return Strong?
Okay, so but there used to be another group called Nevada Cure that helped inmates. So they kind of fell off, and then I started to get literature from Return Strong. And as an inmate, we're always kind of leery on these organizations because are they just talking? What do they do? Are they going to help us? Do they care?
Right,
All
right,
those
right.
questions go until we see the existence of it and the actions behind the organization. So, like Jody said, the restitution issue came up that affected many, 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 many people, and we started getting literature from them. And I'm like, okay, they want to know. They sent these surveys through asking, who's been affected, how, and I'm like, wow, okay, they're engaging. They want to know. So
Right.
I I reached out to them. I didn't necessarily have a restitution issue, but I knew many people that did, that weren't,
That's right.
they don't know how to reach out. So I kind of guided other people at first. Here, this is who you need to talk to. This is who you need to contact. And then as we saw, or I saw Return Strong making moves and really making noise and making a difference, I'm like, yeah, this is who I need to connect with,
Right.
So I stayed connected. And any I like to, because I do have my paralegal cert, so I'm I know what kind of system that I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with the system that is, anything we do is obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anything constitutional, as far as violations of our rights, I will jump. I got involved with that. Be it through the grievance, be it through reaching out to Jody, because that's what matters. You know, not
Right.
not curling irons and stuff. But
Right. Right.
yeah,
Right.
so
Right.
yeah, so as more problems started progressing, COVID hit, like Jody said, and we had another issue that was up front. So I was like, I organized and I communicated, and I was got people involved, and stepping out of prison into a specialty court. I stayed connected and reached out to Jody, and here I am. I know
Okay.
Nevada's policy. Nevada's policy is real trickery, and it's a lot of word
How you mean that?
semantics,
What you
and
mean by that? What you mean by
the
that?
laws, the laws, and the
Okay.
AR policies, the prison policies. It's very They use a lot of meaningless language,
Right.
and there's a lot of confusion with it. But because I've done a lot of time in this system, I got very familiar with the language. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
help, with return strong with, is interpreting some of that language
Okay.
where there's a lot of confusion.
All right, Jody. Talk about where. Talk about, because Ashley just talked about how from her own personal experience and being a victim of a lot of the abuses, how when they became aware of y'all, the way they vetted y'all in terms of like making sure that y'all was serious about the work that y'all was doing, because I'm familiar with that as well, being formerly incarcerated. People oftentimes come in the system, but they're not prepared to do the heavy lifting in terms of staying the course. They give a lot of lip service to our issues and concerns, but talk about why is it that y'all have been so successful at mobilizing the prison population? Because uh, according to you, y'all got over 4,000 people that's involved. But talk about how y'all have been able to mobilize the prison population to have the impact that it has had in terms of changing policies. And we'll talk about some of y'all future objectives.
So this, and Ash, feel free to contradict me if you don't think this is accurate. I think what happened is, in the beginning, we right away started writing to people, because I was like, I wanted to hear from people who were being impacted by deductions, by what's going on with COVID. Are they feeding you? Like all of the different issues that were happening. And I used to beg them, like I would ask questions. Here's some questions about COVID. What's going on with bed transfers? Because we were hearing from, I'm a big Howard Zinn fan. So Howard Zinn always talks about, like, during any period, like there's always the government's version of history and there's the people's version of history. And I was listening to NDOC at every one of their meetings, and I was like, they are lying. Like, that's not what people are telling us. And so they would come to meetings and give this like false testimony. So I got my team together and we just started begging people practically to like just communicate with us. Tell us what's going on with COVID. Tell us what's going on with bed transfers, food, medical care, whatever it was. We wanted to know what was going on. And I used to tell them, and I still do the same thing when we send newsletters in, is I can't promise we're going to work on every issue right now. tell us the story. We now have use a database that catalogs every letter that we get. So if you wanted to know about how many people have written to us about solitary confinement conditions, I can run a report. We can pull those letters and I can answer that. It's not, when we first started, it was a box of letters. Do you know what I mean? But we now get thousands of letters. I think we're probably close to 4,000 letters in 2022. And we
Mm-hmm.
tell people, like, we set the expectation that we're not going to be able to answer everyone. We're working full-time jobs. This is not like, up until a few months ago, we were unfunded. So like, we were just open and honest. I think I wrote to people more like I was writing to friends of mine than I was writing like a professional letter, which is kind of how the way that I interact anyway. But we tried to, it was a two-way street. They would share information with us and we would use that information to move forward an agenda that took what they were, the most important thing that they were bringing.
Right.
In addition, we had to like balance that with areas that we thought we could win and what resources. But then I would explain to them, this is why we're doing this instead of this, or this is what we're,
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to file a complaint with the DOJ. We're trying to do, and it's something where we work together. So really what we did is organize, and we really used a union structure to organize inside the prisons.
Right.
As people would write to us, we had people that were jailhouse lawyers or unit organizers. So I would have a contact, and our goal is always to grow that. So if I need to get a message in, Ashley was a unit organizer and a jailhouse lawyer, and another kind of role we have is key documenters. Those people who can take what the issues are and break them down into ways that when we read them for people who haven't been incarcerated, that we're like, that's what they mean. Like, that's what matters, right? And so part of
Right.
issues, and we use their letters to change hearts and minds. Like, we're the hands and feet of this work. But formerly incarcerated.
Sound like y'all have in terms of organizing, y'all have the perfect union. Going forward, uh, Jody, uh, what's y'all strategy going forward?
So I think going into 2023 and 24, we're a biannual legislature. So we only have legislature every other year. This year, we have the a double opportunity, which I always like to look at everything as opportunities. We have a new governor. He is 30 years in law enforcement. So there are some challenges that are going to be there, but we also have a new director of prison. So since COVID, right before COVID hit, we had a new director who was forced to resign, I believe in October of last year. So there's some hope there that, like, they don't want the bad press that the old administration had. There have already been some moves. The new director is already meeting, and we're planning some meetings, but we have a plan that we're delivering a letter and asking them for certain meetings in the first 100 days of their administration. So the
Okay.
first thing we're asking for them to do is to meet with formerly incarcerated people and um, stakeholders. We're also asking them to kind of come to the table with NDOC to talk about issues that are happening within facilities, and then to also hold a public meeting where people can come and actually express like what their concerns are and what the stress has been of the past several years, in order to really pivot the direction of corrections. With this new administration, I feel like it is an opportunity to pivot into a new direction of what do we want corrections to look like in Nevada in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years. We don't want more of
Mm-hmm.
the abuses that are going on now. We don't want our prisons to be on the last, the top 20 worst prisons in the United States that Ely is always on the list of. It's time to do something different. And while we're dealing with an administration that may be more conservative in some ways, as an organizer, I look at like, there are going to be parts that we completely disagree, but the sweet spot of where we can make change is on the areas that we agree. We agree that people need to be
Right.
treated humanely, that solitary confinement isn't the answer, that rehabilitation is more important than punishment and pain. And so focusing on those areas that we can change. So that's the 100-day, like, we're working on that in the 100-day plan. And then the other thing that we are working on is, I think one of the struggles for for our organization has been that corrections can keep us fighting things that are the tip of the iceberg. They're not feeding people. They're not doing this. They're not all the things they're doing wrong. The restitution, COVID, we could fight those things at the tip of the iceberg and we'll never run out of fights. But one of the really core changes that we want to make is like, how do we change the culture around incarceration? We're abolitionists. So, well, not all of us are, but we're founded on abolitionist beliefs that, you know, we have to deconstruct these systems while we're also building communities that are ready for worlds without prison. How do we educate people who are not touched by incarceration? I think
Right, and I think that conversation, is going to be the larger conversation because that's a conversation that is starting to take shape nationwide, right? But Ashley, talk about what you see in terms of the prison population in the future as it relates to your role in Return Strong.
Well, I am hoping that the system becomes more conducive to with reform and and eliminating the stereotyping of like high risk offenders, not giving them the opportunity to reform,
Mm-hmm.
and keeping that stigma there, as well as the conditions. I mean, it's just something has to break. Something has to break. What's going on right now can't continue to be happening. And the whole thing with COVID, a lot is being blamed on COVID. Well, we're out of COVID, and it is time to move forward in a new direction.
Right, right.
Um, yeah,
Hey,
and I just
Joey, go ahead. Come on,
highlight. I'd like to highlight something real quick
come on,
with
come on.
Nevada and the women. Okay, because it doesn't start in prison. It starts with the sentencing and the courts. It
Right,
starts with the disappropriateness of the sentence structures. You have women and men committing crimes together. You have the man with a record, and he's getting less time than a woman, than the mother, a mother, a wife, and it's that's a big number in Nevada's prison of women that are on co-defendant conspiracy charges. And so you have a women coming in there just broken, immediate, off the top, broken
right, right,
spiritually, mentally, physically, all of that. And then you have the a system that is abusive and neglectful, and there's no dignity there. There's no hu- humaneness there. So
right, right.
what
And
do
I
they
think,
expect to
and I think
happen at?
this is an attitude nationwide when it comes to women in general, and this deal with this racist, sexist, misogynist society that we find ourselves in. Like I told you, they got one woman's prison in Maryland, maximum security, and medium security and minimum security. But women can't get to work release because you don't have no work release environment. But Jody, talk about give us a contact for your organization and how people can get in touch with y'all and what you want people to know, what you want people to do in terms of supporting y'all.
um, I think there's a few things. Like, one, we always are looking for volunteers. Um, and you were easily reached. Our social media and our website, everything is the same. It's Return Strong NV for Nevada. Maybe someday we'll drop the NV and just be nationwide. Who knows?
Right,
That's the easiest way. If you go to the website, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and we're on Facebook with that same. The the other thing that we are opening up this year, and that really people are open, like welcome nationwide, is we're going to be implementing, they're called peer learning circles. And one of the things about the change that needs to happen is that um it's not just like, I think it needs to be led by people who are impacted, but we can all peer learning circles are really a space where everybody's a learner. So you can learn from a harm reduction specialist. Somebody can learn from you if you have a loved one that's incarcerated or you were formerly incarcerated. And so we will be starting peer learning circles. I think the first one is actually in February.
Okay.
And we're going to open that up to anybody. Like, it's going to be on Zoom. We can have up to 100 people. We can break out into small groups. It'll be like, once a quarter, but it gives you the opportunity to really, like, not even network, but just like come and like learn from other people. And it's a space that respects, no matter how you learned what you learned, it's a space that really respects that. And so I think that is how we start getting to the root of the problem is.
Okay. All right, there you have it, the real news about in the Nevada prison system, as we just was given this information by Jody and Ashley. And we want to remind our listeners and our viewers to be mindful of, we're talking about prison industrial complex, and we're talking about mass incarceration. And we're also talking about the blatant discrimination against women in the Nevada prison system, as Ashley just outlined. And we encourage everyone to go to the Real Strong website and check out what they got to offer. Thank you, ladies, for this insightful conversation.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.